Hi, everyone. I'm James. I'm the founder of 17 Tech. I'm here with one of my favorite people, Eric Weber, a mentor and friend of mine for the last several years. Eric has a very unique background. Starting from his kitchen table, he and his partner Bobak grew his mobile agency that spanned across 3 cities and hundreds of employees to an eventual sale. Today, we're going to dive into Eric's background and what he's working on now. So, Eric, thanks for being here. I'm excited to chat with you.
I am very happy to be here, and that was a great intro.
Thanks. We wrote that up. um, well, yeah, I'm excited to chat with you. I know we know a lot about each other, but I think you have a really interesting background, and I want to dive a little bit all the way back into like you personally as a kid growing up, because from what I know, like you played sports growing up, and I think that has a big influence. Like your childhood, were you always into technology, or like how did you juggle that with like playing sports growing up?
Yeah, it was very much both. I wasn't just a sports kid or just a nerdy kid. I kind of grew up in this family that like a computer family. There's always
Okay.
spare parts laying around. Like there's this part of the basement that just had like my dad's old computer and maybe some boards lying around, and I'd cobble it together and use my allowance to like upgrade it, and then like write little programs on it and that kind of thing. And I got into like 3D graphics and design and web stuff because of that. So I was a little bit of a nerdy kid, but then at the same time I was playing baseball and football and riding bikes with my buddies around up and down these huge hills in Connecticut. And yeah, it was a very healthy blend of both of those things.
So what did your dad do to have spare parts like lying around? Was this part of his job, or this is just like hobbies that he had and that your family had when you were a kid?
Well, he's an electrical engineer.
Okay, that makes sense.
So he would design like circuit boards and that kind of
Yeah,
stuff. So he had all those things lying around along with the computer parts and stuff.
got it.
Probably more than he needed to have.
So because he was an electrical engineer, he had this around. So you got into technology from the hardware side first and had like a general curiosity about the hardware side of things. And then that led you to just like getting into computers as a whole, it sounds like.
Weirdly enough, I never actually got into hardware.
Oh,
I
interesting.
wish I
Okay.
did. It was yeah. It was I was just always on the computer. I think I started out writing. I don't know if you've ever come across like text adventure games. They're like these
No.
old school games. There's no graphics whatsoever, and uh, the game describes a scene, like a room that you're in, and then you
Mhm.
tell it what to do next. Like go through that door, use this key, open that thing over there, and you navigate the game through text. So as a
Oh
kid, I was
yeah.
trying to.
It's like
You actually played this?
yeah, it's like what's it called? Like a whatever room. I forget what it's called. Um,
The Room? I know there's
yeah, there's the
like
room. Yeah, I forget what it's called. But it's like when you go to an escape room. It's like an escape room. It sounds like, and it's
yeah, it's
like
very
making you
similar to
cruise all
that.
the way around. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I would like create little things like that as a kid. Like when I first learned how to program in Q Basic, it was called. It
Okay.
was it was this language that came with DOS, which is of course well before your time, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Actually, did you grow up with DOS or anything like that?
I don't think so.
Um,
I don't know. I'm not unfamiliar with it.
yeah, I mean, it was like this command line thing, super crude, and Q Basic was this language that you could write stuff in, and that's how I started. And then like mid to later '90s, web stuff was emerging, so I
Okay.
started to learn JavaScript late '90s, and that's kind of that was a good idea, I guess, because
So self-taught,
JavaScript
like
is
you're
all.
teaching yourself this in your spare time.
Yeah, I was a dork. I was reading JavaScript books and just yeah, creating dumb little things.
That's awesome. So like so when you come home after school, like when you were a kid, you were just firing up the computer, or like were you playing sports with your friends?
I mean, if it wasn't sports, it was yeah on the computer playing video
Oh,
games too. I think that was a huge inspiration.
yeah.
I loved
That's awesome.
like role playing games and adventure games, um, and so I kind of had like that creative side too, where it's like, wow, these games are cool. I want to create things like that.
Mhm.
I liked reading sci-fi books and stuff, and I liked creating those kinds of worlds. Played Magic the
That's awesome.
Gathering. I was super nerdy on the side of playing sports.
I love that. But you, like you said, you always played baseball, it sounds like. And so that seems to be like a theme growing up, and which eventually led you to Quinnipiac. So did you always want to play D1 baseball? Like, was that always a goal growing up?
No, I I didn't really think too hard about it when I was playing baseball in high school. I
Hmm.
just I didn't think about what was next. It's just like, oh, cool,
You're
here's a
having fun.
game. Let's go win it. Let's have fun.
Yeah.
Yup. And I kind of it was Quinnipiac. The Quinnipiac thing happened. I was just looking for schools to go to and what are some interesting programs. They just I think it was 2003. They created a program called Interactive Digital Design at Quinnipiac,
Okay.
which blended design and development together, which was kind of my thing that I was looking for. And so I went and visited Quinnipiac, which is in Connecticut. Um, I'm from Connecticut, so it's like an hour away. I brought like my VHS tape of me pitching like in one game and
Uh-huh.
just like on some random mound showing off my pitches. If we were to go back and look at it, we'd probably laugh at it.
We should
So
pull that up soon.
I don't even know where that thing is. I always imagine it looks like Napoleon Dynamite, the uncle from the football. It's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that quality, I think. But
I love that.
yeah, I showed up to Quinnipiac for like some day where they were opening it up to for kids to look at the campus and everything. And I
Mhm.
brought that tape with me and showed up to the coach's office. I was just like, "Here you go." He's like, "Oh, don't worry, my assistant coaches have been watching you already," and just kind of worked out. Just super
Wait, no
lucky.
way. So you weren't like really directly recruited, or like there was no contact before. You kind of just like found the right school for you that seemed to have a emphasis on computer design, which was pretty cool. I actually feel like I
Yep.
don't hear many universities having that type of program, like specifically like what you were talking about, designing, blending design and development. So you just went for academics, and then you're like, hey, I'm also good at baseball. Here's my tape, and they knew exactly who you were.
Yeah, it was just super weird process, but like I was so naive about the way it normally works, where like you visit the campus, you're invited to visit by the coach, and
Yeah.
like you have this whole thing, um, shenanigans that typically happen. All of that, I had none of it.
Wow. That's so interesting. Yeah, very different than like what I know about it. Like for example, my brother went to go play college lacrosse, and he was recruited from eighth grade. So like they were in contact with him the whole time. And you just showed up with this VHS tape. We're like, here I am. Like, put me on, put me in, coach.
It's so ridiculous. Yeah,
I love
that's
that.
pretty much
That's
it.
amazing. But I love how you focus on like finding the right school. Like we're really focused on academics. Like you're like, this has the right program for me. And what about that like major attracted you to Quinnipiac?
It was pretty unusual at the time. I was looking at schools like RIT and I think it was University of Delaware and God, I forget what else it was. Maybe UConn. And yeah,
Okay.
most of the time it was like split up between either you're going to focus on design or you're going to be an engineer, developer, whatever they were going to call it in their program. So that was super unique that they blended the two together, and that's kind of always how I looked at all of it. It was just like, hey, I need to create something. It involves pixels, cool. It involves code, cool, and they kind of treated it a similar way.
That's awesome. So that became your major, or like what was the major officially on
Yeah,
the
it was
paper?
interactive digital design. I minored in psychology basically because I took all the electives, and one day I'm like, wow, it'd actually be easier to graduate as a minor than grind out electives, and
Yeah,
so I just did it that way.
that's awesome. So then, did you start playing baseball immediately, like when you got to school, like freshman year?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
cool.
pitched like 12 innings or something as a freshman, but super lucky landing spot. We went to the regionals that year,
Wow,
um, won the conference tournament in the NEC, and then went to Texas and got our butts whooped. But it was an awesome memory.
that's a pretty cool experience. And what were the guys in your team like? Were any of them in the same major? Were any of them also interested in computer science?
No, I was the lone interactive digital design major. The rest were
Wow.
like business, finance, that kind of stuff. Bunch of smart dudes. It was like GPA was 3.5 or something average
Wow.
on the team. So it was a good landing spot, academically too, because they set an awesome example of how to balance it all.
Yeah. That's awesome. And so when you were in college, from what I know, you met your co-founder of what later became Prolific Interactive. Was he on the baseball team or did you just meet him in school?
Yeah, he was on the baseball team. He came in a year after me.
Okay.
Bobak Amamian is his name, and yeah, we hit it off right away. It was a lot of fun. We were battery mates, meaning he caught, I was a pitcher, and
Okay.
the story we always tell, which is true, if he would come to the mound for a visit, we wouldn't talk about baseball very much. We would talk about, let's say you're playing Xbox. We talk
Yeah.
about what buttons we'd hypothetically press if it was a video game. So he would come up to me, and we'd have straight faces, and he'd say, "Hold down the right trigger, press up, X and Y." I'm like, "Yes, I will do that," and I think it worked out. I think we had a pretty good record when I was pitching to him.
That was like your like call signs to each other was like video game buttons essentially.
Yeah, we were idiots. That's I mean, what else are you gonna
I love
say? I
that.
guess like, yeah, don't let this guy hit a home run, strike him out. You
True.
know,
So true.
what else is there to say? Sometimes you just need a breather.
I like that. So how did you know he was like the right co-founder for you?
So he's a rare human. Uh, I think it showed right away just through baseball. I mean, part of his story was that he was essentially told that he wasn't going to find the field uh,
Mm,
when he joined the team. They're like, "You're not starting material. I don't know if you're even backup material." Um, and he just didn't care that they told him that. Like, he just worked his ass off, and he was hitting every day, practicing every day off to the side for hours. He would show up to normal practice, but then if you looked around for him at night, he was probably at the gym
oh wow.
um, working. So by his junior year, he was on the field. By senior year, he was a starter, maybe even leading the team in batting average.
Wow.
So like he has that work ethic, this kind of like healthy irreverence for what people in authority are saying. Like, you're going to tell me that I'm not going to be on the field ever? Well, watch this. And
Yeah.
he kind of invented that saying, "Watch this." He would always say that, which was fun.
That's really cool. So you were attracted to his work ethic and you're like, oh, this is somebody that I could kind of like gel with. And so did you feel like there were similarities there or did you feel like you guys complemented each other when it came to like skill sets and personality and things like that?
Yeah, I definitely complement each other. Um, we when we started working together around the kitchen table, it was his house his senior year after I graduated. I'd go and
Okay.
visit once in a while, and he kind of one day was like, "Hey, I have this friend who has a catalytic converter business, and they want to go online and start selling there, and they need a website to do that." I was like, "Oh, cool! Someone actually wants to pay to you know for that sort of thing," because I just had fun coding and all that
Yeah.
stuff, and the fact that someone would pay for it, I was like, "Wow, okay." So yeah, we started working together, and he kind of found a few more deals after that. But it kind of this pattern kind of emerged where he's a great salesman. He would just say, "Yes, this could happen." Like, they'd say, "Is this possible?" And he'd always say yes. And then I would also say yes. I didn't like, I like the challenge. So that we complemented each other in that way. So he would go out, he'd find juicy deals, and I would like the juicy technical challenge or design challenge. And it would just
Yeah.
like, we'd enthusiastically take on whatever it was.
That's awesome. So that was your first client was that catalytic converter company.
Exactly. Yep.
Wow. So like was it like a formal meeting where you guys were like, hey, let's start this business together or it sounds like a little bit organic, like, hey, we're hanging
Very.
out. we're friends. Somebody's going to pay us money. You're like, wow, this is nuts. A similar story, I feel like, for myself, by the way. I was like, I can't believe someone's going to pay me $3,000 for this thing. Like, what is happening? But, and then just like, he just kept going and you just kept going because you like the challenge of the technology, like solving these problems. So did it ever feel like a real business in the early days, or was it just you guys having fun?
Um, it started to feel like a business. So we got a little. Actually, I'm skipping part of the story here. I had a job in New Haven at the time when
Okay.
we got that catalytic converter business.
Yeah.
Uh, so yeah, I started it like the summer after I graduated, and it was a startup, and funds dried up. They had to fold.
Oh, wow.
Like 10, yeah, like a year after I joined. So I was kind of on the side working with Bobak on those projects actually. And
Okay.
the day that the startup folded, I called him up. I'm like, "Hey, guess what happened? I'm unemployed now." And he's like, "No, you're not. Let's make this a real thing." So that's when it all started.
No
Um,
way. So you guys were
yeah,
freelancing together. So college happens. You guys are friends. You graduate. You are a year ahead. So you actually graduate first and get a regular job at a company. Sounds like a startup, right? They fold. Question there. Any lessons from that business? Like anything you observed that was like interesting being part of that like failing startup?
I barely understood what was going on.
Really?
I was yeah,
You're probably
like
like
the
23,
broader
right?
yeah yeah. I was
Yeah.
like 22, 23.
Wow.
The broader context of the business and like how much money was in the account and like the struggles they're having with selling the product, which was like the product was a widget that book publishers or really, I guess any website could embed on their site and it would give them recommended similar products for
Okay.
if you're looking at like your cart. They're basically uh, commoditizing what Amazon does, like the recommended and related products, so that
Yeah.
anyone could use it. But I don't know. I still I should go talk to the guys again and be like, hey, what happened?
Yeah.
It just seemed like they struggled to find their audience for that product, even though the tech was super cool. Um, so that was
Sounds like a
unfortunate. But
classic case of like not finding product market fit, but maybe growing too fast.
yeah, potentially. Yeah, maybe they
Wow.
shouldn't have hired me. Maybe I burned all their funds. I don't know.
How many of there were you? Like how and also what were you working on? Like what was your task?
So I think there's a team of 4 developers, um, and then one full time sales guy, and kind of 2 co-founders that were
Got it.
there,
Okay.
and they did sales also. And one of them ended up joining Prolific later on and playing a
Oh,
huge role.
cool.
His name is Devin George. Um, he's awesome.
Still in
Talk more
contact with
about him
him?
later. Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool.
What was I going to say? So my
What were
role.
you yeah, what were you working on? So you're an engineer, part of the team. Were you working on any like cool parts of the product?
Yeah, I was hired mostly as like a front end developer slash designer.
Okay.
So I was the only designer and only front end developer there, pretty much. And
Yeah.
so I built. I still think it's pretty cool. It was a dashboard to customize those widgets, so you could
Okay.
like change the skin of them and like the dimensions and all the stuff, and then get the code to embed it. Um, and that was pretty cool back then. That was 2009, and it was like jQuery was brand
Yeah.
new, and I was like,
BigQuery was
"Ooh, I'm
hot.
using." Yep. And it was like using Ajax. I was like making API calls
Yeah.
on the web page. I was like, "Wow, I'm at the cutting edge here."
It was
And
revolutionary for sure.
but jQuery made it super easy. It was fantastic. Um, yeah, so I was building it with jQuery, and I think they're using Java on the back end. I didn't know how to work with that stuff, so I was like,
Okay.
you guys could do the back end for this one." um, yeah, and then
That's
also
cool.
I created the marketing website and the landing pages there.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so you really were focused on like the front end, the actual design stuff. So it's cool that your degree kind of came into use immediately. Like you were like part designer, part developer. I feel like now they're typically two different roles, right? And you're like, no, I'll do it all. I'll take it all the way to the front end.
Yeah, I don't think I learned that like people really try to divide those roles until a little bit later on in Prolific. When I would go into companies and be like, "What are you? Are you a designer or a developer?" I'd be like, "Well, I don't know.
All the
I
above.
create things. You
Yeah,
you have this thing that needs to be created. I'll do that."
I'll do it.
So, yeah.
That's great. So that startup inevitably failed, and it sounds like one day, well, you're freelancing a little bit the whole time with Boback. He's still in college at this point.
Yes, actually, yeah. He graduated a year after me. He went into grad school and then
Okay,
quit grad school to start Prolific.
that's awesome. So then you call him, hey, I'm unemployed. He says, no, you're not. And then is that when it started? Like that's when it actually became a business.
Yeah, yeah.
It's pretty epic.
Went out and found a little office space in Hamden, and which was dangerous because we still had friends around town and stuff that would, try to distract us. And
I was gonna ask, how did you
yeah,
guys also afford that? Like immediately, like Bobek was bringing in enough clients, and you guys had enough work where you're like, we're getting an office.
I think by most standards of accounting, we did not have enough money. We figured it out.
That's how it
we
goes.
um we would we definitely didn't leave budget for food, so we figured out kind of the schedule around town for like free wings and free whatever happy hours.
No
So we would swing by there, and yeah, it was pretty
wait,
bad.
that's amazing. I mean, we've all done it, right? Like I feel like every startup when they're coming up, they do something stupid. Like I remember I was making 3 grand from one client, but I was paying 2,500 for our rent. So it was like I was making $500. I was like, what am I doing? This was like super early. And so you don't know, like you can't do every single role, right? Like you can't be a good accountant and sales and development. So it's part of the mistakes. But that's great that you guys like took the leap of faith and you're like, we're gonna make it official, we're getting an office. And so what changed when you got the office? Did the types of clients coming in change, or did you just get more professional, or were you guys the same two college friends just shooting the shit, but now in an office?
It made a huge difference because we could at least have the facade of being a real company, and
Okay.
we definitely got clients we couldn't have. uh what's an example? Oh yeah, ctcapitalreport.com still exists. um Local guy in New Haven, he just grabs links and he kind of posts them about Connecticut politics, and
Okay.
there's no way he would have came and visited Bobak's kitchen table in his college house, for example. That wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
So that was um, a decent sized deal for us at the time, and that helped us out a lot. And yeah, and it also gave us this new sense of like, this is real. We're growing. Like, we're a real company right now. It's not just freelancing. It's
Yeah.
We're an agency.
Did you know you wanted to be like doing agency work when you were in college? Like when you graduated, was that the goal to be in that agency world? Because it's very different than like, a regular business or a regular startup.
I don't think I was really aware of like the landscape out there of the different kinds of work that I could do.
That's so funny.
I,
Yeah.
I was aware of agencies, I guess. Like, I just didn't in depth. I didn't know the way it worked. I didn't know the way the industry worked at all. And I never looked at myself as like, yeah, I'm going to create an agency.
Wow. So that you weren't like, this is my career path. You were never like, I'm going to be doing agency work. It just is like, oh, people paying for projects. I guess we're an
Yeah,
agency.
yeah. I don't think there's ever a moment either where I was like, should I start an agency or should I not? Like, it just happened.
That's amazing. That's so funny. It's so full circle in a sense because you did that and you didn't know the landscape. I also didn't know the landscape, and I only knew what an agency was when I saw your agency, which I think is so
That's really
funny.
funny.
Yeah.
Which there is, yeah, I have a similar thing in my story, and I
Really?
love that
Okay.
you visited the office and
I'll never forget
you just
77 Sand Street. Yeah, it was incredible.
yeah.
Blew my mind.
I
Yeah.
love that you went right up to one of the product teams because
Yeah.
we had everyone sitting together around the product, and you sat down at the table and were asking questions to people. That uh, I find that so cool.
Yeah, yeah, I'll definitely share that. But I was like, how much money do you make? And the girl told me, she's like 70 grand. And I'm like, you don't even code. She's like, okay.
I wonder if she's telling that story or told that story. Like this random guy just sat next to me and interrogated me about my salary, and
I thought that
then
was so much money. Yeah. Then he insulted me.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Told me I'm worthless, have no actual skills.
Yeah, this poor
Good job.
project manager. She's like still scarred. Oh man. Yeah, I couldn't believe it. I was so shocked. But yeah, we'll get into that because like that had to be probably year 9 or 10 for you. So like right now we're kind of in year 1, and you guys had this first client, starts paying the bills, it sounds like. Where did you find these clients? Like, was it just local businesses?
Yeah, initially when we first
Okay.
started, then it kind of snowballed, and Bobak was an awesome networker. His brain is basically a Rolodex. Like he just remembers everyone, and I feel like you have the same kind of brain. It's
Really?
it kind of impresses me endlessly because I forget everyone. I'm the opposite, but no, I'm not that bad. Um, yeah, so he was incredible at the networking piece, and actually, I feel like I'm skipping another part of the story. About a year and a half into it, we went to Dumbo,
Okay.
just like you,
Brooklyn.
but it
Yeah.
was a little bit different at the time. It was not a tourist attraction. This was like 2010, 2011, around
Okay.
then, and it was just like the streets were torn up. They were, everything was under construction.
Yeah.
Uh, but it was around this time where agencies were starting to emerge in that area, which was really cool. So companies like Huge and Carrot Creative, which is who we were
Carrot
visiting.
Creative. Okay.
You remember them?
Yeah, I do. They were
Yeah,
big. They were big in Brooklyn. There was like 3 big agencies I felt like in Brooklyn. You were one of them. Carrot Creative was another one, and then I don't think RG was it RGA. I don't think they were in Brooklyn, but somebody else was big over there.
it was Huge. Huge
Yeah,
was in Dumbo.
huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, huge. Yeah,
Yep.
cool. So you went
Big
to Carrot
Spaceship.
Creative. Oh,
I think Big
spaceship.
Spaceship. Yeah. And all of those agencies had this like air of very cool, right? Like
Yes.
just untouchable, kind of
Yeah,
like the
big
biggest
names.
badasses.
Yeah,
Yeah,
best talent. Like they had the coolest people. So you guys were like these small 2 guys. Were you still 2 people at this point?
yeah. Well, in this part of the story,
Yeah.
we're just visiting. We're
Okay.
So Mike Germano from Carrot Creative also graduated from Quinnipiac
Okay.
a few years before us, and he invited us to go visit their office. And like this was, they were still pretty humble at that point, but to us it looked incredible.
Hmm.
And so Mike showed us everything. We're like, wow, that's amazing. You're working with these people. They're paying you more than $5,000 for things. Wow. Um, and then he kind of like took us outside. We're in front of the East River. I remember at like this picnic table eating a sandwich, and he kind of I think this was a pivotal point in terms of like our perspective. He kind of looks at us and he's like, okay, so do you guys want to be the best in Connecticut or the best in the world? And I said Connecticut because I thought it's a fantastic state. And Bobak amended me. He's like, no, we want to be the best in the world.
Hmm.
And that was pretty pivotal, kind of that perspective shift, because our minds were kind of within Connecticut.
Yeah.
Like
You were born and
just
raised
doing,
there. It's pretty much what you knew, right?
yeah, and also a slight inferiority complex. Maybe I had it more than Bobak did, but
Mm,
just looking around, being like, wow, how do we become as awesome as these agencies? Kind of seemed impossible.
yeah.
Um, but Mike convinced us it was very much not impossible. And yeah, so that summer, after that visit, Bobak actually moved to New York and he started hunting for business in that area.
Oh,
And
wow. So did
that
he
was
give you
kind of
any
turning point.
insights when he sat you down, or was he it was purely a perspective shift where he's like, no, this can be way bigger?
I don't remember a lot of the things he was talking about. I think he was, he's giving us anecdotes about what was going on and how he
Okay.
was doing what he was doing. I think they were amazing at branding. He talks a little bit about that. I don't know if you remember like their Twitter presence. Everyone had their own avatars and all that stuff.
No,
They just
I don't
created.
think I was using Twitter much.
They just seemed so cool. They had this illustrator on their team that would just turn everyone into these avatars, and it just made them look. Yeah, it just made them look so cool, even though they were a bunch of just young people starting out,
Yeah.
like we were. And so
That's
he
amazing
talked
though.
about branding.
It's just being yourself, being a little creative, and everyone else on the outside thinks you're cool, and that probably attracted a lot of different people to them.
Yep,
Wow.
yep. And it kind of showed us like, wow, there is a lot of bullshit out there,
Mhm.
and we're not bullshit. Why don't we keep doing non bullshitty things and build our brand at the
Yeah.
same time, and just keep doing that, keep grinding away at that.
I would love to like hammer into that thought real quick because I see it a lot now, especially like online and like this YouTube weird culture of like getting rich quick. And a lot of people pick agencies as the way to do it. And I think maybe agencies have a bad rep because like a lot of them are all sales and they don't deliver. Like, what is your perspective on how to not be bullshit? Because like your story is a 10-year journey, which we'll get to as we keep going. But like, you have to put in the work, right? It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen. You're not going to. People are like, I've made millions of dollars after 6 months. I like no, like that. There's no way it's sustainable in a sense. So like, how do you be a great agency and not be bullshit? In your opinion?
I think um, the landscape might have changed since I've been in it, but the way business was structured at the time was very much. I think agencies kind of grew in like the ad world, like designing ads and that kind of
Yeah.
thing, and then later on it became websites and that kind of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and it kind of like afforded this way of structuring work where you could totally screw clients. Like
Mm-hmm.
this whole um, let's create a big plan up front and get clients to sign off on it, and then ding them if things change at all with
Mm-hmm.
change orders. And obviously, as you know, things do change and should change because
Yeah.
you're creating that plan when you literally know nothing
Yeah.
and you've barely discovered anything about the work. So I think that gave agencies leverage to really screw with clients. It gave them these levers to kind of tilt the whole all the deals that they're in their direction, to kind of put
Yeah.
the risk on the client. And so in order to not do that, we kind of I don't think it's crazy anymore, but kind of embracing that agile mindset, which
Yeah.
a lot of people I think still say like as an agency, you can't do it as agencies. Like you can't do that sustainably. You have to protect yourself from changes and that kind of thing. But we looked at it and we're like, how can you actually say you're doing good work if you're trapping your clients within these rigid plans and screwing them over if it changes at all? Like you're not optimizing for the quality of the product that you're building. You're
Or the
optimizing
changing
for
time. Yeah.
yep, yep. Which I seems like you kind of have a similar philosophy.
Yeah, but I learned it from you. Yeah, so it's like, yeah, it's so true. I totally agree with you. I remember one of the first problem, so kind of two stories to piggyback off you right there, which was like I remember when I went to your office seeing your pod structure, and I realized these guys work for your clients like pretty much full time. And I was like, oh, well, that's incredible. Like they're dedicated to this client, which shows
Yep.
agile. And the other was when Justin, who, is like your partner at 1-7 for people who don't know, and also head of operations and strategy. I remember when he started by consulting for me for like a year, and I kind of came to him and complained, and I was like, I waste so much time on proposals, and they're bullshit because I'm guessing. Like we don't actually know what we need to do, and like you said, it's always going to change, and then somebody gets screwed. Usually me, because I didn't want to ever really do a change order. Like they're horrible, and you have to ask for more money or whatever. And like you said, you're trapping the client. So I would get screwed because I didn't ask for enough money, or I need more time or whatever, and I need to move on to another client or something. So he was like, no, we're doing product strategy. And it's like he introduced that service, which is like 10 grand. And so you pay for the service, but it's worth it because it's a short-term engagement and you're actually paying the agency to do the work up front and the research. So you're not just going in blind, and it's better to invest 10K up front and get some research out of it and know what you're going to get into before signing 250 grand away and being trapped and whatever. Right. So that was revolutionary to me, but and we tacked it on with our pod structure, but that came from inspiration from you. So yeah, I think finding different ways to scope and not just scoping every project that comes in and writing proposals is like kind of the way around that point. I think it's really hard, but I gel with everything you're saying because change orders are horrible and they really hurt the customer.
Yeah. Like you're pretending that change is not going to happen, and you're kind of giving them this illusory price that it's not going to end up being that.
Yeah, I mean, especially if you sign like a over 3-month contract, the market changes every quarter, like even faster than that, right? So it's like the whole industry or product or customer that you're building for might change. So like you definitely need to be able to adapt for them. So love that you said that. So that was kind of what made you guys different. It sounds like how you guys cut through the BS was this agile mindset, which I think is huge. And how did you guys practice agile? Like, were there certain methodologies or systems and processes that you guys put in place?
It was pretty vanilla Scrum that we had in place. I think the thing that might be different is it was 1 week sprints.
Oh, interesting.
Which is a little hardcore.
That is intense.
It could. It was a topic, and I'm still not sure what we didn't really play with different sprint lengths, so there might have been a more optimal one. I was always trying to introduce like Kanban kind of stuff.
Okay.
And kind of turn it into like Scrumban, where you have the continuous flow, and you're visualizing the cues and where the blockers are and stuff like that. And all of those principles always, I always thought they were really cool. But I think Scrum is so easy to onboard people onto. Everyone knows it, so it just made sense to stick with that framework.
I love that you guys took on 1 week sprints. Like I remember we started with 1 month sprints, and when we got down to 2 week sprints, which is more optimal for the client as well because you're delivering faster, that was a huge accomplishment for the entire company. 1 week sprints is nuts, and I think every client would love that though. So I think it's really cool that you guys got to that point because you're shipping every Friday pretty much. It sounds like.
Yeah. I think it went well with our strategy to kind of because that whole agile thing, it's not that clients didn't understand it, it's that it might not have blended with the way the company thought about working with agencies.
Okay.
So there was kind of this phase where we had to prove that was the right way to do things. Like if we want to create a long-term engagement with them, get them to re-sign a contract and kind of do it within that framework, we had to like prove quickly that it delivered value and that it could continue to, and that
I kind of love
worked
that though.
better. Yeah. So the 1 week sprint worked with that. It was like, if within 1 week that, they signed the contract, the team's there and they're working on it, we ship something valuable in 1 week. Like, what better way to prove the model and actually keep doing that?
Yeah. Like we always like to say, like, immediately when you start an engagement, try to get a quick win. For us, we've been experimenting with helping lower customers' AWS costs as like, how do we get something to pay for ourselves? And and that's just like how the option we chose. But I love that you're like, oh, showing them something at the end of this week after they sign the contract, like game over. They're happy. They're always indefinitely happy. That's really cool. I think people wait months and they don't show the client. Like a lot of people who come to us, they have previous experience working with agencies and they're used to waterfall and not seeing a product for 3 6 months and just seeing
Yep.
the final product. And it's like, maybe they want to change something, whatever, and they're totally unhappy. So that's so cool that you got something in their hands in 1 week.
I love what you do with the AWS. Uh, you lower the cost of that.
That's a new one. Yeah.
The exact idea. It's not so much where it's like, wow, here's a whole app in a week. It's for us, it would be like, oh, here's a build. Like here's test flight. Download your build, and it would probably look ugly, but there was an app, and you could open it, and
Yeah.
like had a smiley face in it or whatever. But boom, now we could iterate on this.
Yeah.
But yeah, what you're doing with AWS that's such a cool tactic.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we're trying it out just now, and I think it's only works for startups who have a product already or companies who have a product. But because like you can't lower a bill if there's nothing there. But yeah, that's like been the goal. It's like how do we show immediate value? I actually learned that from a CFO firm. We hired a fractional CFO firm, and they immediately found they came to us within 1 week like some cost like that we were paying for that like lowered our bill by like a couple $1,000s a month. Like our like it might have been like subscriptions or something like that. And I'm like, oh, that paid for you guys. Like, good work. And they taught me. So they taught me that. So that was pretty cool. And so you guys kind of to go back on the timeline of the story, but I love that we jump into these tangents. So let's keep doing them.
Yeah.
To go back to the timeline of the story, you guys went to Carrot. Sounds like it's changed your whole perspective. And that
Yep.
I feel like in business, it's actually all you need sometimes. It doesn't have to be like a crazy lesson. It just has to be like a perspective shift. You did that for me. They did that for you. So that's pretty cool. And then you guys go back home. It sounds like there was probably some thoughts in between then. And then you stayed and Bobak's like, I'm going to New York to find clients. Like how did that go?
Yeah, exactly. I stayed behind servicing. We had like clients in New Haven at that point that
Okay.
we were working with. And yeah, he was just hunting for business. I think he was like living out of his sister's living room in Manhattan or something like
Wow.
that, Lower East Side. And yeah, he did find some business, and then Carrot rented us some desks out of their office.
Oh, cool. So they were fans of you
Yeah,
from the start. They tried to give you some chances.
they were fantastic. Yeah,
Cool.
they were amazing. And at that point, they were in a new office, and like they had exploded, and so it just kind of kept feeding into like what is possible. That in our imagination, what could we possibly do? Uh, so it was us, and at that point, we had one developer, and
Oh, so tell me about that first hire. Like, when did you guys get the capital to make an additional hire? Like, how did that happen?
so in Hamden, we did have we did hire like a designer at some point. We had
Okay.
interns. We hired a marketing manager kind of person,
Oh, wow.
and yep, and that stuff it went fine. Just some turnover, and yeah, when we got to New York, we had this intern from I think it was University of New Haven. Jimmet was his name, and he was a badass. And neither Bobak or I knew how to develop for iOS, but he was able to do it. So
Okay.
he made the move to Brooklyn, and he was part of that core initially.
Wow. So was this your first? So this guy introduced iOS development to you guys.
The way we did it before that was we would contract actually
Okay.
when we were in Hamden. Uh, yeah, so eventually we were able to get an in-house one.
Oh, cool. So I want to get to that part in a sec, but tell me about so when you guys are able to make these hires, was it because you guys had a bunch of clients that were becoming steady, or did you have like one client that changed the tide and you're like, oh, we can afford more people than just ourselves?
It, yeah, I need to look back on this. Yeah, I don't think we had a steady long-term pipeline going at the
Okay.
time. It was more like, all right, we got enough money to hire. Like, we have to hire actually in order to get this project done. And
Okay.
then we got to make it happen. We got to, find the next project after that to keep it going,
I
which I'm
love
sure
that.
you're all too familiar with that early on as well, right?
It's mini gambling. Yeah, it's mini bets all the time. And you're like, I'm betting on myself that in the future I'm going to find a project that's going to keep us alive, but I have to get this person here. So, yeah, that's people like I don't get people who bet on like sports betting and stuff. Like I can never get into that because I'm like I like every day we're risking it. Like I have my risk tolerance is already up here. Like I can't handle something personally. So I love that you guys are like because I think everyone thinks everyone has it figured out, and like you don't, like ever really. Like there's always a new problem. So for us, at least, it's like, yeah, sometimes it's like we work with startups. Are they gonna be here next year? You know, like are these startups gonna be alive? Like that's always a concern for us. So that's cool
Mm-hmm.
that you're like, it's not steady, but we need the people, so we're gonna just go for it and figure it out.
Yeah, totally necessary if you're bootstrapping. There's
Yeah.
really not many other choices.
So when Bobak goes, this is year 2 about.
Yeah, just about year 2. Yep.
Okay. So you guys stay behind. You have a small team up in Connecticut. That's great. Bobak starts looking around, and it sounds like you hire one iOS developer. When did you all make the jump to, like, what year did you all decide to also go to New York?
I think it was 2012. Yeah, maybe late 2011.
So this is year
Man,
3 or 4 now.
I think it was closer to year 2, like end of year
Okay.
2. Yeah. So yep, moved to New York. There's 3 of us. And then I guess we found the deals, found enough money to get office space in Dumbo, our own,
Oh, not
which
in Carrot.
non-carrot. I think we were
Wow.
there for, God, my memory's so bad with our timeline. I think it was like 6 months or so that we were in Carrot until we were able to find our own office space. And at that point, having your own space in Dumbo was
Crazy.
fantastic. It was such a big deal to us.
I mean, that's
Um,
amazing. Yeah. And I'm sure it was weird bringing clients to Carrot because they're like, am I hiring you or am I hiring Carrot?
yeah, that probably was weird. I actually actually don't remember bringing clients there.
Oh,
We
it's
might
just
have
a
just
space to work.
we might have just went out and visited them or something. Man, I cobbled together the story beforehand because I
No,
feel
you're
like
good. This has been
there's a lot of
great.
details I forget. Yeah, actually, we started hiring. We hired our first project manager right before we moved to the new office. Pat McGann. He was an early guy, and he started out. He was a Quinnipiac hockey guy.
Okay.
Obviously, we had that whole pool that we
Yeah.
couldn't stop dipping into, and he was funny because his resume. I think the only thing that was on it was that he sold fireworks some July in Connecticut from some parking lot.
So, he's like sales experience, sold fireworks from a parking lot.
So he
And you
was,
guys were like qualified.
but we worked with him when we were in New Haven. We worked on, like, he cobbled together some money, and we worked on a project with him where you could swap books and stuff like that at
Okay.
Quinnipiac. That was called Swookit, and
Sweet.
and we worked with another future prolific guy, Kevin Bowie, who was also on the hockey team on that
Okay.
project, and he joined later on too.
Seeing a
Um,
theme.
so Pat was one of those key hires. He came on as a project manager, as green as they get. All he knew how to do was sell fireworks and play hockey. But he has like this legendary work ethic,
Okay.
similar to Bobak, and so he grew super quickly and helped grow the business and grow the team and everything,
Yeah.
which was huge.
That's amazing. So the key hires seem to be some talent around you. Like when you guys started to scale, you're like, all right, we got to obviously scale the engineering team. And then like it sounds like one of those first key hires was a project manager, actually.
It
So like
was,
that
yeah.
way you don't have to be always client interfacing. Would that like free you up or
Yeah, just I wasn't very organized. Bobak wasn't very organized. So that, that gets pretty detrimental when deals get a little bit bigger and there's more moving parts and
Yeah.
teams were getting bigger. It wasn't just, it couldn't just be the kind of thing where you'd throw me at it and I would design it and develop it and I could keep it all in my head. We were
Yeah.
actually starting to create teams, which was kind of new.
That's really cool. And so this is kind of just like a personal question that I've always wondered, but like we're very similar where I feel like we're gritty, we bootstrapped. I am not a professional person at all. Like don't even have a college education, like would never do well in like a slalom or a Deloitte type setting, right? I just could never do it. You guys obviously at a later date grew to be very similar in type sense, like a very professional agency. Did you ever like have to turn on the jets and become like professional, or did you guys just kind of stay yourself the whole time?
Really good question. Yes, absolutely. I think there, I think we were a little bit immature initially. We had, we came straight out of school and started this business.
Yeah.
Uh, Pretty much. There wasn't too much time to learn how to be professional.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, how to interact with employees, how to do that kind of thing. So we did have a lot to learn. Initially, we were boozy. We'd have beer around the office and stuff like that. It
Yeah.
it was, I don't know, maybe it was a different time, maybe, but I kind of think it might have been that plus the fact that we were pretty immature initially. So yeah, we had to
Okay.
grow up pretty quick.
So you did. You rose to the occasion. Like you kind of like were like, all right, we'll put on our best like work face at some point. And when did that happen? Like was that year three when this started to get legit, or like did this happen like much later?
I think yeah, starting at year three, and it was just ongoing. There's always stuff
Okay.
to learn. Um,
Okay.
trying to create that. It wasn't so much that we wanted to create like a show up in a suit and tie kind of environment, but we did want it to feel professional, and we wanted to be professional. We wanted to be a place where people would join knowing that they could advance their career. Like that's people's
Yeah,
lives at that
that's
point.
true.
So it once that happens, you start taking it super seriously, which I'm sure you understand.
Yeah. I feel the pressure now for sure. And what did you do to like get yourself to that level? Were you reading books? Did you go back to school? Like how did you like almost uptrain yourself?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, reading tons of books for sure. Uh, I don't think that took care of the professionalism thing. It more so took care of. I don't know. It just felt like I always had this knowledge hole that I had to fill because of
Yeah.
that lack of experience, just kind of throwing myself into this and like not knowing what I didn't know. So I just felt like I had to constantly read. I was reading a lot about agile and lean and stuff like that. Programming books, how to create clean architectures, all like the
Oh,
classic
cool.
books like
Yeah.
that. Um, Design books, lean startup, anything I could get my hands on that related to how to build better products, how to work better as a team, how to manage things better. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I feel like the type of like founders and people who get the companies off the ground in around the kitchen table, right? In the weird office in Jersey City, whatever, are different people who like run the business like from like 2, 3 million on, right? Like what I've started to notice, it's very rare that the founder is still the CEO. Like the Mark Zuckerbergs and the Jeff Bezos, who are founders and CEOs, are rare, and I think people think that they're more common. But at some point, mostly the founders get not kicked out, but like you have to bring in a professional CEO, which is a job. And
Mm.
did you guys ever feel like this is something I'm talking to myself about? I'm like, do I have to eventually bring somebody in or step away and go learn? I think a good example is I think his name's Francis from Gymshark. He was a kid who started Gymshark like at 19 or whatever. He brought in these two guys who were like president and CEO. He stepped away for like 5 years, and I think he learned every function of the business as they went from like 10 to like 100 million. And then he came back and he was ready. And he's like 30 now, though. And I've thought about this to myself. And were you guys ever like, oh, I'm not qualified to run this at some point? Or were you guys like, no, we got it. Like, we're just going to keep rising to the occasion?
Oh man, I mean, I feel like it's cyclical. We'd get into little ruts where like, wow, do we suck? You know, are we over our skis right now? Can we actually deal with this? I think that happened a lot, but um, like I mentioned with Bobak, his work ethic and his kind of like, no, you're not going to tell me what's possible or impossible or what I can or can't do. Like he was constantly rising to the occasion, constantly adapting. I don't think I've encountered a human that adapts like he does and pushes himself forward that way.
That's awesome.
So I got lucky in finding that kind of business partner.
That's huge. Yeah. And so at this point, was he CEO and you are CTO, or like what were your roles?
I had a super weird title. I was a chief
Okay.
experience officer because that probably should have changed at some point, but and I was kind of like the creative and technical co-founder. I was
Okay.
grinding out pixels and code and initially at least growing those teams and everything. So yeah, that
Cool.
was the title.
That's awesome. And so after that first hire, or that first project manager, which seemed to be like a key hire, like when did stability happen? Like, do you feel like you guys ever hit stability, or like was there a client that you remember that you're like, oh, this is game changing for us?
So the game changer for us was ModCloth. So ModCloth, I haven't looked them up in a little bit. I hope they still exist, but they're this company out of San Francisco, retail, just online only actually, and women's fashion, and they're a really cool brand. So we flew out there, and it was a humongous deal, uh, relative to what we were used to. And there's like four of us. We had a designer, we had a developer. There's me. There's Bobak. Might have been more, but they wanted to like interview us separately.
Okay.
Like, how's tech work at your company? How's design work? And they were
Yeah.
cool because they're agile, so they wanted to know that we could work within their agile framework. And somehow we convinced them that they should hire us. And they asked us if we had an office out in San Francisco. We did not, but that day we found an apartment to lease, and we considered that our office. So
No way.
little bit of smoke and mirrors in order to get that deal, but it was a big one.
So,
So that sparked growth out there and in Brooklyn a little bit.
so how did they find you? You found them?
I have no clue actually. Just Bobak working some
Bobak being
magic, I
Bobak.
guess. Yeah,
So
and
so you guys went out, flew like again, year 3, 4, maybe.
this might have been 4.
Okay.
Feels year 4ish.
Okay. And what do they want you to do for them?
So yeah, we're working with their engineers to build a mobile app. So
Okay.
yeah, their first iOS app. It was pretty good. It's a pretty good app
That's
for the
cool.
time.
And when I came across you guys were actually known as like some of the leaders in mobile. And when did that happen? Because your experience was in web, right? And design. When did you guys become like a mobile first agency?
I think pretty early we decided like was it 2013. Um, at that point, we had a couple key hires that came on board. Dan Healy, who became our COO, came
Mhm.
on board. Devin George, who I mentioned earlier, um, who hired me at that first startup, he was
Yeah.
on board, and we had an offsite, and I'm pretty sure that's kind of when we looked at the business, we're like, should we keep taking on these websites and that kind of stuff, or is it time to focus on this emerging industry, mobile? So that's what we did. It
Wow. Okay. And do you feel that was your differentiator?
was huge. I think, as you know, focus is a big, like it's hard to have a strategy that's able to cover all these different areas like web and mobile and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So focusing allowed us to kind of have a cleaner strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when you and I were out in Salt Lake City and I was like losing my mind because I was like, what is our focus? What what do we double down on? And I remember like talking to you and you're like, I was just mobile. So I'm like, maybe AI for you or something like that, which I thought was really cool. So that's awesome.
Mhm.
And that's what these guys hired you for, because you guys were experts in this and they didn't have that ability on their team, or?
Yeah, they did not have mobile designers and mobile engineers. They had web and backend people, and
Okay.
they were great engineers. Actually, their APIs were awesome. They built it on Rails.
Oh,
It was
nice.
great, and I think working with them, they were legitimately working in Scrum and doing it well. They had like Scrum masters, like they were adapting their process and doing all the stuff you're supposed to do, and like delivering at the end of every sprint, doing
Yeah.
all the good stuff. So we learned a lot from them that way too,
Uh,
which was
okay.
invaluable.
That's cool. So you guys lived out there for a little bit so you could go to their office, or why did you guys get the apartment?
We had the people had to live somewhere that we shipped out there. A couple people moved from Brooklyn out
Oh,
there.
wow. Okay.
Um, so we're like, yeah, we got you covered. Here's where we're going to live. And it's our office too while we're at it.
So what were you guys making on this deal compared to what you used to make, if you don't mind me asking? Like, what made this so big for you guys?
I don't remember the exact number, but it was like a few 10K versus a few 100K kind of thing. Like it jumped up an order of magnitude that we weren't used to.
Oh, wow.
Um, it was like the first big deal that we had.
Wow. So you're making a couple 100K a month now just from, or maybe like 100K just
Oh,
from this client.
yeah, it was a few 100K overall, if I remember it correctly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Wow.
but
So
it,
that,
it was way more than we're used to.
did you ask
It
for
was
that,
a
or
few.
they just, that's what they were expecting?
I think it was both. It aligned really well.
That's cool. It's funny because I've heard stories from like Andrew Wilkinson, who is the founder of MetaLab. I don't know if you were ever like competing with them at the time, but he's from Victoria, BC, and he seemed to get a lot of his business from San Francisco too. That changed the game. So that's interesting that you both kind of ended up out there at some point.
Hmm. Yeah, I
Wow.
think we crossed paths a few times.
Oh, actually,
They'll, they might have beat us in a few things, if I remember correctly.
really interesting.
Yeah,
That's
or
very
vice
cool.
versa. I don't know. I wasn't so involved with every deal where I saw who we were competing against. So yeah, I'd have to ask Bo back about that, or maybe you can at some point.
Cool. Yeah. If we ever meet. Um, yeah. So you guys now have some stability. You're making, it sounds like monthly retainers was the model to like really get this to be scalable. Did you guys ever raise capital?
We borrowed a little bit, um, did that, and then later on, yeah, I gotta you know what I gotta think more about the timeline on this stuff.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. But it sounds like you raised through some debt, or you like did some like maybe like a line of credit or something like that to scale resources, and then
A little bit of that. Yep.
put some capital together through some type of investment.
Yep.
Cool. Cool. And so I'm sure like while you were working with all these clients, you were working on a ton of awesome ideas. But naturally, as at least as myself, as an agency owner, you have your own ideas too. Did you guys ever like work on your own internal projects?
Yeah, we ended up creating uh, kind of a CMS kind of thing. We called it the AMS, App Management System,
Okay.
and it was it was content stuff, CMS kind of stuff, along with managing like feature flags and stuff that uh, what do we call it? You basically just turn the app off if there's like a big issue. Kill
Okay.
switch. There we go. Stuff like that that would help coordinate kind of the operations of apps. And there was that. I create a little internal tool that helped us scrape websites and kind of reverse engineer forums and that kind of thing, because at that time there's still a lot of clients that did not have APIs, or the APIs
Wow.
were like just not even close to suited for mobile apps.
Wow.
So I created a tool that made scraping super easy and interacting with web forms super easy. And it
Very
worked. It
cool.
was actually really fast.
That's cool. So you went in and you like scraped all their data so you could essentially access this, or
It was real time. It was kind of like
wow.
a in a way a reverse proxy where a request would come in, and then it would be an endpoint. It'd be an API endpoint, and then with on the server side, it would go request a web page or hit a form or something like that, and then it would use a library like Cheerio, which is pretty much server side jQuery, to let you just grab the data that you need from the HTML and then return it to the front end. So it was,
Interesting.
I think, I think it's kind of a familiar technique these days, but back then it was like, what you're doing? What using my
Yeah.
website? So yeah, that was one of the tools.
That compared to like an first of all, really cool. But that compared to like an API, was that ever like slowing down performance? Like that seems like a huge load to be running that in the background the whole time.
You'd be surprised. Yeah, I mean, we put caching in there as well, but most of the teams that we were working with, they their websites were super optimized, right? Like they were caching their web pages. So if we hit it, we'd get it back in a few milliseconds, and then scraping it took a few milliseconds. It was super fast,
Wow.
and if it wasn't, like we could engineer a way to speed it up. So
Really
it worked
cool.
out. It's really interesting.
So the tools you built internally were more to like you weren't reselling them, you're helping with overall performance within the company.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We ended up um, we did end up selling to AMS. So like we'd work with a client and use the AMS while we are working with them. But then once we are gone, they would still lean on it and pay us. So yeah, I kind of wish we invested more in that because that seemed to have promise.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I know we only have like 15 more minutes ish. Do you have to hop now or in 15?
15.
Okay, cool. Um, I want to go into. I think maybe we should break this up into part two because so like maybe we'll
Yeah,
cover up
my brain's a
until
little tired.
yeah, yeah. These
I
are
was trying to
exhausting.
like I was trying to remember like the funding stuff, and my brain just literally a void of activity inside my brain
No, it's
right
all
now.
good. If you
Ugh.
like breast up and we'll maybe hit that one again because I think it's very interesting for startups to hear about an agency raising money too. So I think that's like pretty cool that you guys actually raise money because I feel like a lot of agencies don't honestly. Like for example, we leverage debt as well at one point. And so that's really useful. And I've talked to another agency owner who's really was like a big advocate for lines of credit, which I thought was also very interesting. So instead of like lump sum loans. So really interesting that you guys raised some capital. Would love to circle back to that if you're ever comfortable. But I would definitely want to get into like, as we kind of fast forward a little bit, now you guys are in San Francisco. You guys have an office in New York. How many people are you at this point?
Uh, so like around the ModCloth deal,
Yeah.
I think we were like 20 people at that point.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, and so
And
we
like,
I
if you
think it
don't
was
mind
like
me asking you personally, as someone who started in their kitchen, like, what are you making as a founder? Like, what is your salary from year one versus this year that you're in ModCloth
year
year?
one. Year one, there was no such thing as a salary. It was
Yeah.
like
Yeah. Of course.
we just whatever it took to pay rent for me and Bo Back's apartments and everything.
Yeah.
Year two, God, I don't remember having a salary until like year three. I could
Okay.
be wrong, and it was like 30K.
Nice. That's good. That's
I
great.
definitely saved up quarters in order to take the subway. 30K is not very much in New York, as you know.
No. Yeah, I lived off 16K in New York and I was hopping the railings. Like I never paid for that until I got a $200 ticket and I was like, I was better with the monthly pass. This is terrible.
Oh, man. You had it way worse than I did.
Yeah.
16K.
Yeah, whole year, 16K. Actually, not the whole year. I apologize because COVID happened and then like the whole thing got shut down. So I guess I made it half a year on 16K. But yeah, we'll take it.
COVID. So when I first met you, It was around that time.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
You looked put together. You didn't look like you're living off 16K in New York City.
Thank you. Well, everyone I hired made way more than me. I was just like I was paying myself last, like I was kind of in that mindset, which looking back, I've been advised and I'll never change it, but I was like, you should be paying yourself first because you kind of are the business. But I was like, but I need the talent to help me. So it's like I'd rather them be comfortable and me be in this weird spot. So yeah, because all I need to do is like grind around New York. But yeah, so it's
Hmm.
I get that. So year 3, you're now making a salary, and you probably are using like a payroll system, 30K. What are you making by like year 8? Like, are you guys making CEO salaries or?
It was yeah. By year 8, it was a lot more normal. I think it was like 120 or something like that.
That's awesome.
So yeah, that was very comfortable at that point.
Yeah, you're like, okay, we're living life, and in the beginning, kind of like last like few questions we'll kind of leave you around, like leave you on, or like talk about is like as a founder, for example, I brought in actually a money coach, someone to help me understand money because my risk tolerance has caused me to be so messed up about understanding finances that like I never had my personal finances together. So I brought her in and she would teach me about like 401ks and like Roth IRAs and all this stuff. And I was like, I'm not investing in that. And she just goes like, why would you not put some money away for that? I was like, all my money's in one vehicle and it's 1.7, and that's where the returns will be at some point, right? Like I'm not doing all these other investments. Like, were you able to use that salary to like, did you have to make up for some lost time on like your personal finance growth at all, or were you kind of just, or were you like, nah, screw it, I'm all in on Prolific still?
I was so bad at managing finances. Like I think I didn't have yeah, jumping in straight from college right into that and
Yeah,
having no standards of living. Like you were just partying in some house drinking disgusting vodka. Like who are you kidding? You have no standards.
yeah,
Uh, there was nothing that was going to deflect me from that mindset uh, until I met a few people like Devin George was kind of like that the responsible adult in the company, which was great that he came aboard. He started to kind of bring that topic up and things like that, and that's when I started to learn, and that's how I knew I was terrible at finance as well.
I am too, by the way. I think every founder probably is because, like, you again, you're sacrificing so much. There's no real savings. There's no nothing, right? Like, you have to figure it out maybe at a later date if there's ever like a liquidity event, or if again, like when you're getting more consistent salary. But then, like now, I'm 27, and I feel like my friends who had regular jobs out of college have all these savings and all these personal finance goals, and I'm kind of here like, what is this? Like, I don't understand what you guys are even talking about. So want to ask because I wasn't sure if every founder feels that way, but I feel like a lot of them probably could relate because there's no standard of living in the beginning. Yeah, like I was living on a futon in New York. You were like figuring out like any just making ends meet. So there was no personal finance goals. But I wanted to ask you one last question here. Do you have any good war stories from being on a project? Like, were there any projects that you're like, oh my god, like we learned a lot or like something crazy happened that like sticks out in your head?
Oh yeah, God, I feel like almost every single one of them. I just need to pick one out. My brain's blanking. One sec. We'll cut this out.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think I had one. I had one written down somewhere. Maybe I should search for war stories. Oh, I didn't write any notes for this. Damn it.
That's all right.
I mean, what's more interesting, like later war stories or earlier ones, or
Um, what's more on the top of your brain? Is it a later one?
I like the Soul Cycle one when we sold them. That
Okay.
one's
Yeah.
fun. So, yeah, yeah. So Soul Cycle. This is like a good war story because it was when we were pitching them. They were trying to create. They already had a mobile app, and it was just like not doing well at all. Like it was just shutting down on people, and their whole business model or their booking model was Monday at 12 p.m. All the classes opened up at the same time, and so there's probably 3 or 4 thousand people that were into Soul Cycle that would religiously show up at that time. So as you can
Mhm.
imagine, that's pretty crazy for a back end to deal
Yeah.
with. And also their app, like the UI was kind of messed up around it. Like people would miss out on classes because of the way the UI worked.
Oh wow.
Um, so to us, that was kind of like an opportunity. It's like, wow, we could probably create a prototype while we're pitching them that would demonstrate we could solve these problems. So in a span of like 2 days, we put together like a team of 3 people or 4 people. I was working on the back end part, and then we had like a designer and an iOS engineer working on the front end part. And so they fixed the UI thing. I fixed the back end thing, basically by creating a server that would interact with their API
Hmm.
and just cache everything super efficiently,
Okay.
and then opened up a WebSocket that the apps could talk to, so it was getting real time updates. Because before it was like polling,
Uh-huh.
like if there was 4,000 people on the app, there'd be 4,000 people hitting the server at the same time repeatedly, like every half
Oh
second.
wow.
So I just created, kind of like another reverse proxy kind of thing, and
Okay.
did that. So we present it so we show up at Soul Cycle, and we're waiting. I guess they scheduled us right behind another agency. I actually
Do you
forget
know
which
who it was?
agency it was. I totally forget.
Okay.
But they're all in like fancy suits and wearing cool leather shoes and cool bow ties and weird stuff like that. And we walk in, and we're all like, wearing our jeans and t-shirts and all this stuff. And we know that they just probably showed off 200 slides of like
Yeah.
mock-ups or something. So we go in there, we sit down, and we have like the dongles to plug in so that you could project the iPhone onto the screen.
Yeah.
And we sit down, and I forget what we say. I'm sure we said something, but we just start showing off that prototype to them, and they're just like blown away. And
Really?
that was really fun. It was like
So you had a
that
working
was like
prototype.
it worked. Somehow we got it in 2 days. Like, and we had all that stuff to show off, like the UI, and the back end was working and all that stuff,
Wow.
and that sealed the deal. Which from that we were kind of like, one of our values was show don't tell, and I think it kind of came from like proving it out that way.
Wow. And so they signed with you that day, or how did that end up going down?
Good question. I kind of forget. I think it was like that day or the day after that.
But there was no like, oh, we're gonna go review. They were like, we're going with you. Like you guys blew our mind.
There might have been a review. I don't. It wasn't on the spot, but we could
Okay.
tell they were pretty impressed.
Yeah, yeah. Because like this other company's showing a bunch of slides, and you're like, no, we decided to like actually build the solution to the problem that you just told us about.
Yeah.
Wow. And so were they having also issues with like people like if there's 4,000 people going to this application, are they all trying to book the same time slots? But if it's not updating in real time, like you could have double bookings at the same time or whatever. Like it sounds like all these issues by not having like real polls from this database with like an influx of users at a single moment.
Yeah. Exactly. Totally. Yeah. That was a
Wow.
huge issue. So if you don't design and engineer that correctly, like you're gonna frustrate the hell out of people.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. So you guys ended up winning them, and how long were they a client for you?
Oh, forever. That one
Oh, really?
lasted. It lasted years. Yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
What do they have you
So
do? Like you started with iOS and development, like app development. Did they just give every project to you, or?
no, I think we stayed pretty focused around mobile. Just continuing to improve the app over time. They kept growing the business and adding features to it, like a shop and stuff like that, like an online shop.
Yeah.
I think we're doing a lot of like we're doing a little marketing later on, I think, too. But leadership changed, and at some point they're like, "Who are you? Why have you been here for 2 years?" And I think it's kind of at some point, they just didn't resign.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
which is
That's
tough.
very cool. Sounds like a pillar client that probably attracted a bunch of other clients too.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It was definitely a flagship in New York to show off because
Yeah.
everyone knew SoulCycle. They're a really cool brand and all that stuff. And the app was it was like very tangible when you played with it, like the work that went into it.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. Well, Eric, thank you for that story. Yeah, I think like we should probably wind down. I know we didn't get into like half of it. I definitely want to give you a chance to plug anything you're working on if you're working on anything exciting.
Yeah, yeah. We'll we'll do a whole other part because yeah,
Cool.
there's
We'll
some
do part
interesting
two
stuff to
then.
talk about.
So this is to
Yeah.
be. So we'll get to that then. But yeah, no, thank you so much.